know I've got no higher priority than working to make Milwaukee safer. That means using strategies that address crime and violence in a number of ways. As I stand here today with Chief Jeffrey Norman of the Milwaukee Police Department, I will say again that MPD, the Milwaukee Police Department, plays a vital role in building safety here in our community. I want police to have the personnel as well as the resources necessary to reduce crime in Milwaukee. And I'm standing as well with Ashanti Hamilton, the director of my administration's Office of Violence Prevention. And yes, I do believe in prevention. I support interventions as well. And I also endorse partnerships with community groups that help to make Milwaukee safer as well. And very importantly, I support addressing the root causes of crime. You've heard me talk about this time and again, making sure that we have good jobs, family supporting careers even in Milwaukee. Those things will help to reduce crime. I'm actively supporting efforts to reach young people, steering children into productive activities in the summer months, especially here in our city. I'm adding to neighborhood stability with housing efforts because I want families to be less transient in neighborhoods all across Milwaukee, and I want them to be better connected with the neighborhoods in which they live. The first quarter crime statistics have been tallied, and the numbers are positive. Let me be clear, though, I'm not satisfied. I'm not satisfied with where we are with the levels of crime and violence here in the city. But the crime numbers tell us that we are indeed, though, headed in the right direction. You've got the data with you, and I just want to call out some of the numbers. Auto theft is down dramatically by more than a third when compared to the last 2 years. Overall, violent crime continues a downward trend in Milwaukee, and that's a positive sign as well. Compared to the first quarter of last year, violent crime is down 7% in the city. Homicides have not yet returned to 2021 levels, but compared to last year, homicide numbers in Milwaukee are also down about 20%. While we're talking about statistics, I never want to forget that there are people behind each of the numbers here on the data that you have. People like Bobby Lou Scheffling. The Journal-Sentinel has been writing about her death allegedly at the hands of her boyfriend recently. The articles focus significant attention on the victim's interaction with police, and although I'm not in a position to comment specifically on those interactions, I will say this, that the outcome of this domestic violence situation is tragic. It's horrific, and we need to take steps to make sure that this situation is not repeated. Part of that is to continue to work with the Milwaukee Police Department and the work that they've undertaken that has earned praise from domestic violence advocates on the ground here in our city. And we also need to build upon that. We need to make sure that every interaction with victims of domestic violence are respectful and they are also thorough. We need to make sure that every domestic violence victim must be heard and that every reported incident must be approached seriously. As public servants, we are all in the customer service business, each and every single one of us. Whether you're the mayor of the city of Milwaukee, whether the janitor sweeping the floor and somebody steps up and asks you where something is, or if you are a police officer at a police district station, all of us are in the customer service business as public servants. And I expect that all employees to treat people both publicly as well as privately with respect that the community deserves. Society has come a long way in the most recent decades in its view of domestic violence. And so too have the police. The culture on that is shifting and needs to continue to shift. But we're not resting because we can always do more to protect victims. We must learn from Bobby Lou Scheffling and others in violent situations as well. I want positive crime trends in Milwaukee to continue. In multiple ways, we continue to work to make our city safer each and every single day. And let me be clear, we have work ahead of us to keep driving crime down in Milwaukee. And all of us will continue to work together in order to do that. I'll conclude with a comment you've heard me say many times before. That's that every person needs to be involved in public safety. Everybody has a role to play in reducing crime and increasing safety here in our city. Set an example with your own actions. Provide guidance and accountability to those people who are closest to you. And work with any and all the agencies that are working to make Milwaukee safer, whether that's with your elected officials, whether that's with our Milwaukee Police Department, whether that's with the Office of Violence Prevention, whether that's with your neighborhood groups, your block watches, whether that's with groups like Crime Stoppers. all of us have work to do, and we can work together in order to increase safety here in the city. And with that, I'll invite Chief Norman to offer his perspective as well.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Good morning. Today I'm pleased to share with you our first quarter 2023 data on the crime in the city. In the past, we shared this information twice a year. Now, with our violent crime in place and a commitment to the city to keep our community informed, we want to share this data with you quarterly. MPD uses regular updates to analyze our data and determine how we can best focus our efforts on what the numbers reflect. I'm very pleased to report that this quarter, Part 1 crime is down 19%. Homicides for the quarter are also down approximately 22%. Property crime has decreased 24%. Auto thefts have decreased approximately 34%. These are all trending in the right direction, and I'm hopeful that we continue to make progress in these areas. I want to be clear, just as the mayor stated, this doesn't mean that MPD is taking a break to celebrate our successes. It means that we're working harder to make our community safe. Juvenile behavior must be addressed. We see instances of carjackings and firearm-related crime attached to young adults. The negligent handling of firearms by juveniles is a significant issue in our community. We're working to forge additional partnerships to target juvenile behavior, to prevent and deter dangerous behavior, but to arrest only when necessary. We call on everyone in the community to intervene and spread the message to our young ones that they must follow laws and be responsible for their own future and the future of this community. MPD will do our best to enforce the laws, but we cannot be in the homes, and we rely on everyone in the neighborhoods to help us prevent harm to others. I also wanted to mention the priority MPD has on domestic and intimate partner violence. A large part of our strategy in Milwaukee in the violent crime plan is to continue to enhance domestic violence initiatives and create new and innovative approaches to domestic violence related incidents. That work continues, and we have seen some great momentum on the front. MPD will work tirelessly on putting long-term processes in place that are effective in keeping victims safe from harm. If our members fail to act professionally, follow the processes, and are negligent in any way, they will be held accountable by our department. As a reminder, we all are an important part of public safety. If you have any information regarding criminal activity, contact the Milwaukee Police Department, or if you'd like to remain anonymous, contact Crime Stoppers for 414-224-TIPS. Appreciate the seeing Director Hamilton here with us because, as we always say, together as a community, we are better. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I think we'd be open to questions.
Thanks for your time. Just a quick look at the numbers. I mean, you speak to positive trends, and while homicides did fall between 2022 and this year, we still see a larger number compared to 2021. Mr. Mayor, what would you consider success, considering those numbers are still higher than just 2 years ago?
We've got work to do as it relates to homicide. That's why I talked about the strategies that we've been implementing since I've been in this office. That's why some of the successes that we've been able to accomplish over the course of the past year plus are so critical in terms of making sure that we add family supporting jobs, careers to Milwaukee, because those things help to drive crime down. That's why it's important for us to work to make sure that there's stability in neighborhoods, especially in housing. Those things drive crime down. And when we're in a position where folks have access to those things, to good paying family supporting careers and stability in housing, and they're not food insecure, then it drives down the likelihood that folks will participate in activities that sometimes will lead to homicide. So we're working on those strategies, and we continue to raise our voice each and every single day when there's violence that happen in the city, especially around firearms, especially around guns, to our partners, not just on the ground in the community, in neighborhoods that we want folks to lift their voices, but to the folks in the other levels of government too, in the legislature as well as in Congress, that they need to do something. They should do something. They should do their jobs as it relates to access to firearms. We respond to that stuff. Our officers go out each and every single day and arrest people who are doing bad things on the ground. But there's a piece before that, though, in which people have too easy access to guns. And they use those guns for deadly purposes with poor conflict resolution skills, and they sometimes end up hurting and even killing people in our community. So there's work to do. We're actively working on a daily basis in this administration to address those things at their root, which takes time. But we're also calling out our partners in other levels of government to do their part as well.
This question is for Chief Norman. We're seeing that carjackings are standing out right now.
Mm-hmm.
Who's responsible for carjackings, and what work is being done to bring these numbers down?
So yes, we've seen an unfortunate trend for the carjackings. We see, and again, when I talk about youth, it's more than just teenagers. I'm talking about anyone under the age of 21, but being a part of these activities. And the most problematic about those that we're seeing involved in these activities have no record. This is very disturbing. This is something that is, a very questionable behavior, because usually it's like almost a graduated type of action. This is violent behavior. This is unacceptable behavior. So beyond using our own task force, we do have, a number of different investigative task force working with our respective districts. We're also reaching out to our community partners. We reached out to the Office of Violence and Prevention, Director Hamilton, because we still need to engage our youth. We need to ensure that there are intervention methods, ways to interact so that they're not drawn to this type of behavior. Again, seeing a number of kids involved in a carjacking with no record, the bigger question comes up, why? And that is where we are looking to see, are there activities that our kids need to engage in? Are there ways to be able to have discussions with them about the dangers of what they're engaged in? But we're very aware of this. We're putting forth a lot of different efforts, but we're also, as the mayor talked about, working with our partners, sharing the data, letting them know in regards to what the concerns are. We've mentioned this in our VR-FAST, the Violent Response Public Health and Safety Teams, because that's a consortium of different partners in the community working on the very same issue in regards to our youth issues and crime problems.
Chief Norman, I have one for you and then one for Mayor Johnson. For you, Chief, do you have data that specifically focuses on juveniles? Because I know you mentioned juveniles are a big concern. I believe over the last 9 or 10 days, we've counted 9 different shootings where the victim is 19 years old or younger. Do you have specific data that relates to how often juveniles are involved in these homicides or non-fatal shootings, and how that relates to the last couple of years?
So we do track it. That is a constant conversation in regards to working with our partners. We have what's called the Public Safety Review, which is a weekly review with a lot of different partners. Weekly review under the VR-FAST, the Violent Response and Public Health and Safety Teams, because we all know that beyond just, again, the enforcement, the arrest is not enough. We do see a concern of not only our young ones in possession of these particular weapons, which is illegal, but also the negligent handling of weapons by individuals who are allowed or should not have guns that are harming our youth. And so these are opportunities. Again, the Milwaukee Police Department has been very transparent in working with our partners in regards to that. This is the data, and we know that we cannot do it alone. So we share this amongst many different group settings. We see how we can work collaboratively to impact and intervene. And I'm very pleased to know that there have been a lot of reception and understand what the lift is, because this is a serious trend that we're seeing.
And then real quick for you, Mayor Johnson, you mentioned earlier that there are individual stories behind these numbers. We just had an incident over the weekend where there's a party bus that comes down from Green Bay. They're caught up in a crossfire of a shooting trying to take people back from a concert. This business owner is saying they're probably not going to go back into the city to do night events. How worried are you that individual instances can undo some of the work that these community partners are doing when visitors are caught up in some of the violence?
Yeah, whether it's visitors or whether it's, family members who are affected. Like when somebody gets shot, when somebody gets hurt, there's a ripple effect that happens there. There's a ripple effect that happens, not just the person who got shot is hurt or killed, but their parents, their mom is affected by that. If they're a parent themselves, their children are affected by that. Their friends, their other extended members of their family are affected by that. There's a ripple effect that happens here. And that also includes, our friends who come from other places as well. Milwaukee is the #1 tourist destination in the state. about a quarter of all tourism dollars spent in the state of Wisconsin happen here. When tourists come to our state, they interface with Wisconsin right here in Milwaukee. And so there is a nexus between, those sort of incidents like what happened the other day, and our ability to continue to be, the tourism destination in Wisconsin that we historically have been and will continue to be. So that's why it's equally as important for folks to, make sure that they don't use guns in silly ways that folks have been doing it, using it for, not just retaliation, but just because you have a simple dispute. It used to be back in the day that if you had a dispute with somebody, right, you'd have an argument and then you'd leave, or you just would walk away from the situation, or, worse, maybe you get into a fist fight and leave with a bloody nose. But these days, folks decide, I've got to end you. I got to pull out a gun and end your life. That's silly. It's cowardly even. And there are consequences to that, again, for people's families, again, economically. And then you got to think about, what sort of impact that has on jobs locally. You could be affected. Your negligent actions behind the trigger of a gun could put us in a position where folks that you don't even know end up losing their lives, or losing their livelihood rather, because people who otherwise would be coming in are no longer coming in to spend their dollars, and then you end up out of a job because somebody else was acting silly with the gun. So there are all sorts of interwoven consequences to gun play in Milwaukee.
Paulo, you have a question?
Half for you in Spanish, but I can answer in English. Some people say during winter crime decrease and during summer crime increase. That's something that you can confirm with numbers in the past years, Chief?
I think that's been thrown out the door for these past couple of years in regards to whether crime affects, whether it affects crime. Because if that was the case, I think I'll be doing some type of prayers or, looking for other ways. The unfortunate thing that we're seeing is that, just as the mayor just alluded to, conflict and poor conflict resolution is driving a lot of these violent encounters. And unfortunately, it has serious consequences. But also, as pointed out in the crime plan, the negligence of those who own firearms. We're leaving it in your vehicle, unsecured, or leaving it in your house where your young ones could get a hold of it. Weather changes only where the location of crime occurs, unfortunately. And so when it comes to, well, it's cold and, crime went down, well, unfortunately, we see it just goes inside of a house or it goes inside of a restaurant or a place of business. It really is about some of the things that the mayor talked about of how do we drill down to root causes, working with partnerships, how do we engage our young ones, how do we, really spread the word of, there's better ways to resolve your issues than going to something that's destructive and devastating as a handgun or a rifle. We're not there yet, we're working on it. I believe that a part of our partnerships is the crime strategy of the day. We can talk about, the Cobra principle or criminal-led intelligence. That's not going to work. What's going to work when we all understand that we have a hand in safety? How do we make sure that we're part of the solution rather than part of the problem, and that we take ownership to do it consistently?
I mentioned this because last weekend, we have a bunch of teenagers next to the lake have a lot of disturbance. So that's why people say that. When warm temperatures come in, a lot of people go to the lake, they have the parties, they have fights and everything. That's what they say during summer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say it changes locations again. Our youth get together, they have parties inside buildings, and we've seen it not only in Milwaukee. It's one thing I need to clarify, because every time we turn around, it's like big, bad Milwaukee. That's not the case in regards to behaviors. We are really putting a lot of effort into addressing these situations in real time, putting together strategies, making sure that we're working with not only our partnerships within the city, but also outside the city, because crime has no boundaries. And so when we see these gatherings that are going on at the lakefront or a parking lot or a park, those are the same individuals who may have, at a birthday party, at a school function. And so we need to understand, let's stop talking about weather or, what's going on in regards to, where kids are gathering, and talk about behaviors and talk about solutions about dealing with these behaviors. How are we giving these young ones more positive environments to be in? And I know, and I appreciate, again, Director Hamilton being a part of, we have Friday night get-togethers with our youth and in the law enforcement. Working with the UConn, which is the neighborhood groups in regards to having more things to do for our children. Working with the Safe and Sound. Those are all activities, or even the mayor's, the program in regards to Camp Rise. Those are going to be tangibles, ways to be able to have long-standing solutions to these issues that didn't pop up overnight.
Chief, a general question. What message do you have for community members who might be concerned about MPD's ability to address domestic violence in an effective and empathetic way?
The biggest thing is that we recognize our shortcomings, and we are, I believe, have a proven track record of not only being open to feedback, but working with our communities. When we had rolled out our crime plan, one of the things that you saw that was put forth by Carmen Petrie from the Sojourner Truth Family Peace Center, there was a card about warm handoffs. Understand that a lot of referrals come through Sojourner Family Peace Center, but we also understand there are culturally sensitive resources that can help us really have the impact that we look at that we need for domestic violence. Working with Office of Violence Prevention, I know at the time was Karen Tyler, who was a liaison of the sort, to help us navigate what are our shortcomings and what can we do better. And we're always open to more information. I know that we've put more effort and more resources in the domestic violence high-risk team, because we understand that those are valuable and has impact. But we also know that there's a lot of other organizations out there that we're now aware of that we are willing to come to the table and have those dialogue of what can we do better to collaborate and be able to put forth the best practices and, utilize it, whether from a processy type of situation or training. So I know that we are continue to evolve in regards to learning how to be more impactful, and I hope that our prior accomplishments show the being genuine, and also that we're committed to this.
I have two subjects I'd like to ask the chief about, one at a time, if that's all right.
Okay. I thought everybody gets one question. I like you, Elliot, so it's all right. All right.
First, I just wanted to ask about auto theft. What would you attribute the decline in that to? And then also, I know auto thefts don't happen at the same scale as carjackings, but as auto thefts decline, does that somehow, does that explain why carjackings may be up? Are there fewer opportunities for auto thefts, and are people then turning to carjackings?
That's that crystal ball question there, Elliot. I know that we've put a lot of effort into our motor vehicle thefts, but I will never say Milwaukee Police Department is the only reason why we see any type of trend. The partnerships are real. They're working with our business community, working with, again, Office of Violence Prevention, working with the mayor's office. That is the game changer. We cannot, put that forth enough in regards to that. There's more enough work for any one entity, and we all have a responsibility. I'm hoping that somebody learned something at Camp Rise. Or maybe one on Friday night, the impact of between the working with, the Office of Violence Prevention and the resources with our officers had another impact. Or there might be programs out there, Running Rebels, or the other community stakeholders are actually having an impact. All I know is that there is a lot of effort being put forth by all respective entities. And as we know, sometimes crime issues shift, and that's where we have to be fluid with that shift. We start seeing these trends, again, we don't wait for a reporting out to talk about what we're doing. We have real-time conversations with our partners saying, this is the data, this is what we're seeing. This is not like you're dealing with someone who has consistent carjackings on their, these are no history at all. And so that is concerning, to be involved in activities such as that where there's a level of dangerousness, not only for the person who is the recipient of this, but also those who are engaged. We want to save all our children. We want to save all the youth. But we also need to know that if we don't share our data, which I can say this administration has been second to none in regards to transparency, reporting out, but also that we're willing to put our hand out and say, please help us. That we cannot do this alone, and that knowing that this is a big lift for the entire community, we're willing to be at the table.
And next thing I wanted to ask about was the homicide clearance rate. I know it's early in the year, but the number on the sheet, 74%, that's a pre-pandemic number. That's the first time I've seen the number that high since the pandemic.
The claim to fame as a prior homicide detective, prior supervisor, is having the ability to actually do the investigation. What we've been seeing these past couple of years is that you had constant issues or incidents where there was no quote-unquote get a breath of air. These workings with our partnerships, again, you know, the mayor talked about in regards to dealing with root causes. VR Fast talks about housing issues, talking about employment issues, talking about. My belief is that all these things that we're doing has an effect in regards to being able to drill down and get to the heart of the matter. Working with the Sojourner Family Peace Center, having more investment in domestic violence high-risk teams. I will, you know, it's too early to say, be willing to say that those all have impact in regards to what we're seeing as a trend. But I will never take away from the homicide unit the men and women out there who are working 24-hour shifts, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, no holidays off, working to, I think our clearance rate right now is around like 80. They're putting long hours in because, as I've always said, we need sworn officers to do sworn things. Absolutely proud of them, proud of the leadership behind it, and that we need to understand that it is tough out there, but there are people out there who's putting the work in, ensuring that we're bringing accountability and working with our system partners to ensure that that accountability remains and sticks there.
Just a quick technical question. I'm assuming theft is any theft is not auto theft?
Yes, because it has separate theft. It can be, you know, again, retail. I just did a conference speech over at the Wisconsin Organized Retail Crime Association, because you know that's all part of theft, but that's also, you know, break-ins of autos or thefts from, you know, homes. But yes.
Okay. And then second quick question: the two on the bottom, non-fatal shootings and carjacking. My understanding those are a piece of some of the other categories. Which categories in this?
So when you talk about carjacking, that could be part of the robbery aspect. As you see, there's a 3% increase. Nothing to be proud about. Work that we need to do. And again, talked about that earlier in regards to seeing some of the disturbing trends. And non-fatals is a separate category in itself for our county, but it gets counted within what's called aggravated assaults. So because it's not an actual death involved in that particular, we still track it, but it gets kind of caught into the overall aggravated assaults category.
Mayor, question is for you. Yeah, I was looking at the non-fatal shootings as well. It looks like they haven't budged and still up from 2021. It looks like the party bus incident would fall into that category as well. How do you combat that image of people who, innocent concert goers who are on that bus heading home, who say, I don't want to come back to Milwaukee after dark, after something like this, and other people who say, we can't have nice things here in Milwaukee after a bus gets shot up. How do you respond to that? How do you combat that image?
Well, I will tell you, anytime incidents like that happen, it pisses me off. I get upset about that. And I was just telling a group of young men, this is all part of the partnership. I was at Real Men, Real Talk just last night. And we had a conversation with some youth who have been justice involved, some youth who had likely done some things that they probably are not proud of, especially after our conversation last night. When those sort of things happen, it sends a negative message. Our response is this. It's the partnership that you see right here in front of you, whether it's in my office as mayor, whether it's in the police department, whether it's in the Office of Violence Prevention, whether it's in the initiatives that we're putting forward, like our Summer Youth Jobs Program, like Camp Rise, whether it's with the work that some of our other partners are doing out there to engage not just young people, but people generally in our community to set them on the right place. Our response is that when things like that happen, you know, we rise to the occasion and we work to investigate and hold people to account. I've said it time and again. In Milwaukee, if you cause death, harm, or destruction, you should be held to account. You should be held to account. I am so serious about that. I have said it. I will continue to say it. And for those folks who are on that party bus, I know that the police are investigating right now. When they find the people who shot the party bus, and just like when they find people who do any sort of criminal activity in Milwaukee, my expectation as mayor is that those people will be held to account for the crimes that they've committed. And that's the message that we send.